I'm coming. Hello everyone, Larissa here, and this video comes to you via Of Houses and Trees, where I blog about sustainable design, sustainable living, sustainable eating, sustainable everything. If that sounds like something that interests you, then you should definitely click on the link in the description below. And if you're interested in sustainability and creativity, then please consider subscribing to this channel, because those are the things that this channel is about. This video has two parts to it. In the first, I am going to talk a little bit about how to find land to build your dream home on. I would not consider myself to be an expert on this topic, but I am an expert on finding my land and planning the build of a house on, because that is something that I have done, found the land, and I'm going to be doing building the house. The second part of this video is just a quick little clip of my family and I on our land this fall. We went for a walk down to the location of where our house is going to be built, which actually is a different location than the one we originally intended when we purchased the land many years ago, back in 2011, if you can believe it. If you want to read more about how we got our land and kind of what it means to us, you can read that on my blog and my post, The Story of Our Land, which I will also link to below. If you want a bigger tour of our land, you can watch my video from our land tour in 2017 in the summertime. But this video here, I'm just going to talk about 5 things that you should think about when you are looking for land to build a home on. The first thing is deciding what kind of a lifestyle that you want to live. Some people move to the country because they want to have a farm, they want animals, they want a garden, they want perhaps to sell crops, they want to be able to work the land. You know, there's kind of that aspect of it. And then there are also people that live out in the country who just want a little bit more space. So they want to live in kind of a regular home on a piece of land that doesn't require too much maintenance. They just want maybe an acre or a couple acres around them. So of course that would be something that you would need to think of first. It would be fun to look at pieces of property that are much, much larger than what you actually want. But when it comes down to actually deciding, it's good to have kind of a rough idea of, I want 2 acres or I want 5 or 10. It also is something to keep in mind that maybe what you want will change throughout the process. We originally were looking, I think, more in like the 10-acre range, and we ended up with 40. So you never know. The second thing for you to think about ahead of time, or at least during the process, is what kind of home do you want to build? If you are buying a piece of property that has already been developed or that is part of a subdivision, perhaps the home that belongs to that land has already been planned by the developers or the builders. Perhaps they have a few choices that you can pick from. Perhaps they let you do something more custom, but it has to fall within certain guidelines, or certain designers are the ones who would do the custom design for you, so that the subdivision or the developed area has more of a uniform look. If you are looking to do something that's very custom, very specific, if you're like me, you want to design it yourself, perhaps you want something like a tiny home, that's the sort of thing that you'll want to make sure that the piece of property that you buy will allow for what it is that you want, what the home it is that you want, because that's kind of what this is all about, is building a home on this piece of land that you're looking for. The third tip is that you need to make sure to do your research. So you want to research before looking for land, you want to research while you're looking for land, you want to research before you actually purchase the land, and why don't you just keep on researching after you've even purchased the land, because there's so many little things to know when it comes to buying land and building on it. Every country, state, province, county are all going to have their own regulations as to what they let you do to your land and on your land and for the house that you built. So for example, they might have a minimum square footage that they want you to have the house. So maybe that makes it difficult if you do want a tiny home. They might limit the amount of approaches, so entrances onto the land, or you might have to have a special reason to have 2 approaches, which is something that we are going to have, and we did have to have a special reason for that, that one of our approaches is a field approach and the other approach is the residential approach. Other things to look into would be, are there services? Are the services nearby? Is it possible to get them? Again, if you're buying a piece of land that's already been developed, maybe you already have the services on the land, and that's not something that you need to worry about, but you do need to make sure. Another thing to check too is about your neighbors. How close are your neighbors to you? Is there a vacant lot that perhaps will be purchased and the neighbors will be building? Can they build right on your property line? If you want to live in the country and have a little bit extra space, that could be something that is a little bit of a not so welcome surprise. You also should check out if there's any protected or endangered species of animals or plants or anything on your land that you would need to avoid. It's good to just make sure that you find out as much as you can while you're looking and before you purchase, so that you don't get yourself into a situation that you just don't want. The fourth thing that you should do when you are looking for land to build a home on would be to consider your building site. So what happened to us was when we bought our land, the previous owners had plowed through the trees kind of in the spot that they were going to put the road. So that is where we decided to build our road and eventually built our house. But then we had a friend who owns a permaculture business come and take a look at the land, and he recommended that we actually move the house location to a different part of the property, as it would just be a better choice for the sustainability of the land, looking at all of the considerations of all the things that we want to do with the land, of all the things that the land already is. Me being somebody who writes about sustainability on my blog, I am extremely passionate about protecting the environment, taking care of what is already there. I don't think that humans have the right to just come in and build wherever they want and do whatever they want with a piece of land. I don't actually even believe that we own land. That's something that I talk about more on my blog, and in the post I was talking about the story of our land. I think it's more of a relationship between you and the property and the animals and the plants that live on that land. It's a relationship that you kind of coexist in harmony. So that's something that I think about when I look at land, and that's something that I think moving forward as people that we need to think more about as well, is what is best for not just us, but for the land itself. And my fifth and final tip, and probably the best one that I could offer you, is to take your time when you're looking for your land. It can be hard sometimes to be patient about these things. If you get into your mind the idea that you want to buy a piece of property and build a home, it gets really exciting and you start looking and maybe you find something and you just want to buy it. But that's not always the best way to go. Sometimes it is. Maybe you'll find exactly what you're looking for just like that and all will be well. But other times it really pays to just wait. What we ended up doing was we found our property back in 2010, looked at other properties for an entire year after that, and after that year of finding nothing that compared and seeing that our property was still available, we bought it a year later, and that was still back in 2011. All of this time that it took us to purchase the land, and since we bought it, to plan where we are going to build the home and what kind of home that we are going to build, it just means that we now are very certain and very happy with the route that we are taking. And as always, I like to end my video with a quote from a book that I'm currently reading. The book that I'm going to read from right now is The Not So Big House by Susanka. This book is pretty famous in the world of architecture and sustainable design. It was one of the early inspirations for the tiny house movement that's going on right now. And essentially it's about the idea that we don't need as big of a home as we think that we do, which is something that, again, because we waited till after buying our land to build our home, that we came to the conclusion that we didn't need as big of a home as we thought we did either. So I redesigned it. So I just wanted to read to you from one of the pages, quote in a paragraph called The Case for Comfort. We are all searching for home, but we are trying to find it by building more rooms and more spaces. Instead of thinking about the quality of the spaces we live in, we tend to focus on quantity. But a house is so much more than its size and volume, neither of which has anything to do with comfort. I hope you enjoy the short video of our land, and thanks for watching. See you next time. I'm coming. Today's video comes, nope. You also check. Oh, your phone's ringing, but